and that is the banks got money. That's what it's about.
There's a few people that I've been reading about over the decades that have really tried to bring it to the forefront and do something about it, but they got squashed by members of Congress. They got squashed by banks, by accounting institutions, and they actually tried to tell people if you don't fix these things, that the situation's going to continue and get worse every time. And in my opinion, that's what keeps happening because we haven't learned from the mistakes and don't fix it. We need
Oh
to stop
yeah,
derivatives from intertwining the rest of the economy. I wonder if
but
putting
look,
that commercial firewall back up would work that we took down in '99.
but that's what I mean. This is the who benefits from these derivatives at the moment. Who's benefiting?
Big
Banks,
business and
right?
CEOs and
Banks and
derivatives
other
and
financial
banks.
institutions.
Yep, and I believe it's like executive pay packages, and then the banks that want to back the companies that these executives are willing to do anything to meet the stock price, and they don't do anything as far as the fundamentals of the business. They just want a price on a piece of paper to suck stuff out of the economy, and the banks back them because they all make money off of it.
Yes, it's a game. It's a game for the wealthy. They scratch each other's backs. Look, the market makers make a ton of money off options, right? We know that because everybody keeps shouting, "Don't buy out of the money options." So, I mean, that's why they want them. They manipulate. They get fees off of it. Of course, they're going to scream for it to be taken away. They make bad bets based on it, but they get the money up front, and then they want to be bailed out. It's the same game. Nothing's changed. There always needs to be an avenue of manipulation for the wealthy that they're not going to allow for a fair market. And so basically, they'll keep inventing stuff, different means, sources of income. If you regulate one aspect, you'll see something else pop up that's where there's loopholes.
You know, I was watching a documentary, and a former member of the SEC went before Congress and tried to make some good fixes, and he basically was threatened that if he did that, they were going to put in a rider on the funding that would basically defund the SEC and their ability to do stuff, which was nuts to me. But I mean, the few people that push back in the areas that might make a difference, they get squashed by the higher
Oh
ups.
no, because that's who has the biggest lobby, Scott, right? Wall Street. That's why I said the SEC is feckless because it's a dog and pony show because Congress controls it and Congress does not want regulation. They want the image of it. They want to gain the public trust because uneducated people who are not in groups like this or don't want YouTubes go in thinking that the SEC is there and that everything's regulated. Correct me if I'm wrong. If anybody disagrees, I'm happy to listen.
Yeah, it sounds pretty accurate from what I'm seeing.
That's pretty much the gist of it. Which actually brings up something that I was meaning to talk about. This post that was sent to me by this is actually a member of the BBIG trading community that sent me this. Aaron, the guy you see with the Batman avatar. He sent me this and let me know about this guy OmniLaw, that he actually submitted a FOIA request to the SEC. I posted a short video on YouTube just yesterday with a few short comments on this, and I'm really upset about this response from the SEC. So here's the backstory. OmniLaw is he's a public speaker, and he submitted this FOIA request. For those that don't know what FOIA is Freedom of Information Act, and it guarantees the public the right to demand information be disseminated that is of the public interest from any government entity. This is a way for the public to demand pertinent information be made publicly available when it is in the interest of protecting the public. FOIA requests can be used for a lot of things, but it's mainly an anti-corruption measure to force government entities to disclose things that are of public interest. A lot of WikiLeaks stuff actually was born out of FOIA requests. So the government has the ability to deny a FOIA request, but they have to have a justification for doing so. And this was the SEC's response to the FOIA request that was submitted by OmniLaw requesting failure to deliver data. So the failure to deliver data specifically that he asked for was to identify the brokers who caused the 43 million shares that failed to deliver. There were 43 million failures to deliver on the first day of trading of AMC preferred equity, and it's APE. And I actually called this out before APE even IPO'd, when that if APE has a massive surge of failures to deliver, then it is because these brokers don't actually have the shares of AMC available to deliver to shareholders. And whatever that number is, then you will know that that is how many shares have been naked short on AMC, because the notice is too short for them to get this all together. They're not going to be able to fix it right away. So there will be some failures to deliver. The number of failures to deliver will directly correlate to the number of naked shorts in AMC, because it's a 1-for-1 deal that for every share of AMC, somebody has to produce one additional share of APE to give to that holder of AMC. And obviously the 43 million failures to deliver was a signal that a lot of people just weren't getting their APE shares, me included. It took me 3 days to get mine.
Wow.
So
I got them, but I'm not sure I got legitimate or fake. I don't know.
that's
How
the
do we
thing.
know?
That's the thing. You don't know, because the brokers, all of the shares that you own are not in your name. They're in your broker's name. They don't
Yep.
write your name on the certificate of stock. To do that, that's what direct registering your shares does, DRSing. And that's why everybody in these communities is big on DRSing, is that it forces the broker to place the shares in your name, and they are not allowed to do anything with it. And it puts it in the hand of a clearing firm directly of your choice. So a lot of people put emphasis on computer share for this reason, because when they DRS to computer share doesn't provide a way for any of the other brokers to like play these stupid games where they're pulling shares digitally from different institutions so that they can short them into the market, or lend them out for shorting and things like that, or hold them for derivatives and that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
that for that reason, DRSing is quite powerful, because it takes all that control away from the brokers who are doing all this shady crap in the first place. So what was upsetting to me about this particular FOIA request wasn't that the data was being denied, but it was that it was the reason for it to be denied. They labeled it Exemption 4 of the FOIA protects, quote, trade secrets and commercial or financial information obtained from a person that is privileged or confidential. And what I find so upsetting about this is that this is not, trade secrets have nothing to do with this. It's a transaction failure. Failure to deliver is one institution, specifically a broker-dealer, that has failed to deliver on their obligation to put a share in the possession of a buyer. And that is a transactional failure. And that's not protected information. That can actually be disseminated publicly. Like, you as a debtor, if you have consumer debt, that's public information. That can be pulled up by the credit agencies and the credit reporting facilities, that if you have debt, then it is in the interest of any financial institution that you do business with to be able to access that, to know your creditworthiness. And this falls under that same principle, that this is a financial transaction, and a failure to deliver is a failure to deliver the good that has been paid for. That is a transactional failure. That is a default. So it is well within the rights of the consumer to demand to know the responsible party for failing to deliver their obligations. So what in the hell are they talking about calling it a trade secret, and that somehow exempts them from having to disclose who in the hell has been failing to deliver on their obligations? It's a bullshit response, and it's just a delay tactic. And what I would love to see from the community is for everybody to submit a FOIA appeal, because they have to respond to these. They must respond to every FOIA request. Each one they have to go over individually. And like we can make the SEC's lives so hard. We can make their day so stressful just by submitting a FOIA request. Each
Does
one
it
of
matter
these
though?
creates hours of work for them. And if they want it to go away, they need to give up the data. And that's what I would love to see from the community is call them out on their bullshit and say this data is within the rights of shareholders and public retail investors to have access to, and we are demanding it under FOIA, and we will appeal it. And just by the sheer number of hundreds of people that are willing to go and fill out a form online and submit it to the SEC, you can create hundreds of thousands of hours of work for the SEC, where it's like, we will never shut up about this unless you actually give up the data. The only way to make this go away is to actually provide us with the names of the institutions that have been failing to deliver on their obligations. If you want to prevent that from happening, then you're going to have to go through each one of these individual FOIA requests, make your day a living nightmare for the foreseeable future while we continue to pound on the door and make our demands known. And that's what it's going to take. This is a perfectly legal approach, by the way. There's nothing wrong with doing this. This is your right as an American citizen to demand the government release information that is pertinent to you as a consumer, as an American citizen, as a shareholder and stakeholder of a company that was targeted by these dirty financial institutions. And the SEC has no incentive to defend these guys unless they are taking bribes and they don't want it to come to the surface. That is my
What I think
opinion.
is going on. That's what's going on.
That's what I feel is going on.
I hate to say it, it's like I'm with you, except I really think that they would stonewall us. I don't care if 100,000 people did it. At this point, we're in a street fight here.
Well, we can absolutely try. We can absolutely try to go down every legal avenue available. And this is one such legal avenue that actually makes their lives extremely difficult unless they give in to the demand. And I know this from experience because in my work as a penetration tester, this is not part of my work, but I went to a conference where somebody, I cannot remember the name of this wonderful woman. She went and did very hard research on GDPR, which is General Data Privacy Regulation. This is a European, an EU law, as well as the United States, FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. These two specific acts force entities to be willing to release information of some kind. Now, with GDPR, the purpose is for citizens of the EU to demand a company delete their data if they don't want it to be held by them anymore. That's a protected right of EU citizens, and that's what GDPR does. FOIA is the citizen's right to demand information from the government to release it if it is pertinent or of the interest of the public. And while their purposes are different, the bureaucratic nightmare that both of these regulations or acts create causes the companies or the government entities such a headache because they are forced to respond. They're forced to respond individually to these, and they have to do it by mail, and it requires a response by an individual signator. And it also has to be gone over by auditors as well in certain cases. So every single request forces somebody to get up out of their seat and go do something. And just by the nature of there being so many people responding to the same request, eventually somebody is likely to make a mistake. Eventually somebody is likely to let something slip. Or you might find somebody that finally has had enough and is willing to blow the whistle because they know what's really going on, and they go and put the information out anonymously. And that's the power.
Possible. That's what we'd be hoping on. We'd be banking on the latter because
Right.
I don't think that they would intentionally say, oh, okay, we're tired, we're going to go ahead and give you what you want. I don't think that would do it. It would have to be someone who has a conscience.
So
it's possible.
Yeah, it is possible, and that's what I'm emphasizing here. And I'll put this to the community to decide whether they want to be a participant in this kind of I wouldn't even call it civil disobedience. It's just more like civil annoyance. If you're willing to go to the trouble to take 30 minutes out of your day to write out a FOIA request and demand certain information of the SEC, now it needs to be an intelligently written argument. It needs to actually be well thought out, and you have to have a reason for needing the data or wanting the data or the information. But generally speaking, it's quite easy to do. And it takes a long time for you to get a response. But by the volume of people making the requests, will actually force these individual entities, these bureaucratic nightmares that the SEC and FINRA are, it would have a noticeable effect. Like, it wouldn't take long. Just a few hundred FOIA requests could create weeks or months of work for these guys. And each of us has 30 minutes out of our day to waste. I'm sure I can find 30 minutes out of my day to waste to go and send them a letter saying, I want this information, and I feel it is my justified right as a citizen to have it. And I want you to release it to me. And now you're going to have to argue with me and prove to me that you cannot or should not release it, and that you're protected by law from needing to release it. So it's the ball's in your court, SEC. If you have 100 or 1,000 piss off retail investors that say we demand this information, you're going to have to argue with each of us on an individual level that you don't have to give it to us. And each one of us that is willing to go to that trouble can actually have a tangible effect. So that's just what I'm putting out there. But the point of this, the whole argument that this is like protected trade secrets, I feel is complete garbage. It's not true. And maybe it is true, but the trade secret is that these brokers and institutions are shuffling around shares in the back end in order to protect themselves from getting margin called or having forced closure of their failure to deliver stock and being forced to buy them out of the market at market price and cause the price to lift. They want time to go and pull it out of the dark pools in order to actually deliver it for a price that's preferential to them. That's the only reason why they won't do. That's the only reason why this would be a quote trade secret, but it's not. It's not a trade secret. It's just it's shady. It's shady and it's fraudulent, and they are just not willing to let the information get out, because if it did, it would be massively damaging to the firm's reputation. It would be massively damaging to the U.S. equities market reputation, and to the SEC's reputation for protecting them.
Well, worse, it could lead to lawsuits. And see, one thing the SEC is trying to avoid is bringing lawsuits. They even said that. I mean, Gary Gensler came out and said that.
Right.
He said he does not want to, go to court with these big players. He thinks that the SEC would lose because they didn't have the resources. So the SEC may actually be complicit in trying to get these guys to help get their house in order so that he doesn't have reason to go after them.
Even so, even if the SEC doesn't have a leg to stand on, you have a whole army, an army of retail investors. There's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of us, pissed off at the way the system works. Plenty of these people are better investigators than anyone else I've ever met. If you give these individuals the power, they hire some of these guys. They do good work. The retail investors in this community have done a phenomenal job figuring out how this freaking system operates. It's incredible.
It really would come down to the retail investors getting together and being willing to sue the SEC and start, exposing this. That's what would have to happen. Retail needs to harness their power. The problem is we're all individuals with small dollars, and no one individually can sue. So it's like we'd have to get together and hire an attorney to start prying into this stuff.
Well, that's what it would take. I mean, think about how quickly the GameStop movement, once the buy button was taken away by Robinhood and some of the other trading firms, think about how quickly it took for like 4 different subreddits on reddit.com to get set up, and you had all of these individuals, literally hundreds of thousands of individual retail investors, all trying to unpack how the market works and figure out how this happened, why it happened, and what could be done about it. And we were able to uncover so much fraud and shady crap. We pulled up all the dirt on companies like Citadel, Susquehanna, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, all these major broker-dealer firms. We pulled all this information out of the internet and all of these old documents from going all the way back to the 90s. And this happened in the span of a few months. The SEC takes more than 2 years to prosecute a firm for one error, for one problem that they've created in the market, for one mistake, for one act of fraud. Think about how long it took for them to actually, like, the FBI had to pull up RICO. They had to pull a RICO Act to go after JP Morgan for defrauding or for manipulating the metals market because two guys on their trading desk were manipulating the metals market with a handful of millions of dollars back in 2008. It took us over a decade to go after the company for their bullshit. And this is the problem. The SEC, I absolutely understand that they are underfunded, under budget. I don't
and also
care.
given marching orders that they have to adhere to, basically avoid any conflict, not conflict, but anything adversarial to the banking industry.
The complicity and the unwillingness to rock the boat is why we're here in the first place. And this is my challenge for Gary Gensler is if you actually want to see something change, give retail investors the power to go after some of these guys. You don't even have to do anything except to give us the information, give us the data, and we will go and pursue it ourselves. But you have to give us the data. The SEC has
that, TD. They're not going to because they're not going to do anything. They understand that. They understand that once the data's out, somebody that doesn't have to be even small retailers. It could be wealthy people, wealthy individuals that can carry on a lawsuit, that have the ability to hire a top firm and see it through.
It's not necessary. It's not necessary. I don't care. The reputational damage is enough. I understand what you're saying, Phil, but this isn't like me talking about the feasibility of it. I'm not talking about just the principle of it or whether the SEC would morally or ethically agree or how far they'd be willing to go. None of that. What I'm talking about is the absolute ease of this solution would immediately relieve all the burden off of the SEC. Simply disseminating the data they have.
Except that they were guilty of disseminating the data. That's the problem. I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying they do not want to disseminate the data because then they would be contributing. They understand that we could go ahead. That's what I'm saying. They understand we could take the ball and run with it once they did. They understand that. That's why I was giving you an example of a wealthy retailer, let's say, who decides that he has the money and wants to bring a lawsuit. They understand that once they give the data, that basically they would have assisted. They would be an accessory to changing the outcome. They're really, I'm just trying to explain. I think that they're really, really stacked. The DAC is stacked against us. Basically, they're giving orders, I think, one way or the other, to hold the line, put on a good show, but hold the line. That's just my feeling. That could be wrong. I'm with you. We could take the ball if we get the data. We could go to TV. We could do a lot of things once we have the data.
Fine. Then this isn't an appeal to Gary Gensler. This is an appeal to anybody with a moral compass that's working at any of the SEC offices anywhere. Give us the data. Pass on the information that we need in order to go after these guys because they are destroying the market. They're destroying people's lives. And they are using the money that they have to push an agenda that is leading to the destruction of our economy, of our geopolitical sphere, and the stability of the world. Not even just economically speaking. Some of these guys, environmentally speaking, are destroying the world. Some of these guys are pushing warfare. And just having the data to pin these guys up against the wall and force them to face the damages and the responsibility of what they have done is all that we ask, is the data to prove it and actually make them held responsible.
I'm more